and welcome to the YouTube channel for Catch. My name is Sam and I am the founder and lead coach here at Catch. Unshakable confidence is the key to getting everything that you want in life and dating. So on this channel we talk about everything to do with confidence and mindset and how to implement that in your life with a particular focus on dating and relationships. So welcome or welcome back if you're new to us. If you want to work with us in any way or you want to find out more, all that information is in the description box below. So today we're going to be getting into a sticky topic in dating, which comes up quite a lot, and interested to get into this and see what your thoughts are below, which is when to progress things physically in a relationship and when to have sex. And before we get into this topic, I just want to reflect on some of the things that we see within society to do with this topic. There are a lot of opinions out there in the world, in different cultures, in different religions, in different countries, in different sexual orientations and those groups about when to have sex, whether to wait until marriage, whether to wait until you're in a relationship, how many dates to wait, or how to progress, maybe going in stages, so you're not going from zero physical contact straight into sex, but maybe doing it over time. And there's also a lot of commentary about keeping physical intimacy going once you're in a relationship as well. And often, and even around things like OnlyFans, right, and the sex industry, there's so many opinions, and a lot of it is centered around judgment of others, shame, and guilt, which has been internalized and then causes weird and wonky and perhaps unhealthy relationships with something which is so natural to all of us and is something which is shared across every species that is animal species that is alive and is as old as time. And so the reason that we wanted to explore this topic is to try and block out any of that external noise from others judging, or some of societal or cultural expectations that bring shame onto people for what they want for their life. And also just reassure anyone watching this that this video is going to be about empowerment. So helping you make the right decision for you, you taking your own power back to make the right decisions for you, and reassure you that you don't have to sign up to those standards that other people set for you. And it's worth noting that a general concept around confidence is that you're self-validating. You decide what's right for you based on your own values, and that is what makes you feel confident. If you're living by your values, you have that self-belief in yourself and you're happy with what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. And those who look outwards and get very angry and upset and try and control others for their behaviour, especially when it's something to do with like their sex life, right, which has absolutely zero impact on often the person who's saying it or judging someone else for how they act. that comes from a place of fear and insecurity, because people who are truly confident are so focused on their own life and what they're doing and constantly improving their own life and improving their life and the world around them, that they don't have the time to sit there and criticize and judge others for things that they do in their own time. And they also don't have the time to go online and shout about it. So sometimes when it comes to these dating rules or judgments that people put on certain areas of dating, if they're shouting really loud about it on the internet, it's probably because they don't have things going on in their own life, and therefore they feel the need to get validation by expressing that opinion online, even though they're trying to control other people and they're trying to make themselves feel better. So hopefully this video will help with that. So when it comes to deciding when to progress things physically, the most important thing, which I alluded to earlier on in this video, is living by your own values and what makes you feel respected within yourself. So sometimes what we see is that people say, well, you should only have sex at this time, such as in marriage or in a relationship or after a certain number of dates, because if you respected yourself, you wouldn't progress things that early. But the thing is, those standards are different for every individual. So for one individual, they might feel like they're respecting themselves by waiting till marriage because they want to develop the emotional connection, or because they have a certain religion or religious beliefs that they want to adhere to, which is fair enough. But then there are other people who really enjoy that physical intimacy, creating that connection, whether that's emotional or physical, or find it useful for stress relief, or they just have fun doing it, and therefore they feel that self-respect even if they sleep with someone the first time they meet them or after a night out. And it's about building that self-awareness enough to understand, how do I feel when I progress things physically with somebody? Do I feel good? Do I feel confident? Is it something that I can relax and enjoy? Do I feel better after doing that? Do I feel like it's bringing me and that person closer, or am I clear what it is that I'm getting out of it, and therefore I can enjoy it in the moment and move on afterwards? So I think it's really understanding, what does self-respect mean to you related to sex, and using that to guide what you do. And that also might change person to person and over time. So it might be that with certain people, you're happy to progress things quickly because maybe it's been a dry patch, and you respecting yourself and giving yourself what you need is to progress things quickly. Or maybe you meet someone and you have that spark and it feels natural to do so. But then for somebody else, maybe it feels like you feel like you want to take it slower. And that might depend where you are in your life and what your priorities are and what else is going on. So when people say respect yourself, what does that mean for you, without the judgment or projections that anyone else is putting onto you? And what's also interesting about this is we have seen a bit of a trend around celibacy, and from men too. So one of the limiting beliefs or narratives that goes around in society is that men, women control access to sex in straight relationships, and therefore men basically will take sex whenever they can. But what we're seeing is a lot of men and women are breaking out of that narrative and creating their own narrative. And some men are going completely celibate and going, you know what, actually, I only want to sleep with someone when I have an emotional connection, or I realise that some of my behaviours around sex are unhealthy. Maybe I'm engaging too much in online content of a sexual nature, and that is causing me to not deal with some internal emotions, or it's distracting me from some of my other goals in life, and therefore I'm actually going to break that pattern by being celibate, retracting myself completely, and building a healthier story and set of dynamics around sex as an area. So really reflect on, how do you feel when you progress things physically, and what is the intention that's behind it? What are you hoping to get out of it? What do you want to feel? Does it make you feel good after you've done it? And then set up a sex life or way of viewing sex that reflects that for you, without or trying to ignore the expectations of other people around you. And that also includes if you want to be in ethically non-monogamous relationships, and maybe having a different story around sex, but also love and what that means in your life. And then that will help you decide what's right for you. So the first 2 steps are to spend some time reflecting on, what does self-respect look like for you at this point in time, at this moment, with the person that you are being physically intimate with. And the second thing is, what is the intention that's going behind the chosen action? What is it you're hoping to get out of it? How do you feel throughout the process? How do you feel before, after? If it's a casual relationship, how does that make you feel? And use all of those data points to make your decision. And the last thing is that we would encourage, or the third thing, is think about a connection over a transaction, because that's a healthy way to look at physical intimacy. Something else that we see often in people talking about dating online or from other coaches is that often, again, in straight relationships, women control the access to sex, and therefore, men want someone who doesn't give that privilege to everyone, and when a man makes a certain amount of effort, they deserve sex, or they should earn sex with a woman. The problem is with all of that language is that it centers around a transaction and one person giving something in the hope of receiving something else, or with the expectation of receiving something else in the future, or someone feels like they need to give something in return for certain treatment. Whereas a healthy relationship and healthy relationship dynamics are about 2 individuals who are healthy within themselves, nurture their own feeling state of feeling confident, worthy, loved, good enough within themselves, and then decide what they can give to the other person freely. And then you have this beautiful exchange of love in every form between these 2, or polyamorous relationships even more, between these people, based on mutual respect and love and wanting to give to the other person without attachment. And therefore, if you're spending time with someone or dating someone, or maybe not at all, and you're deciding how and when you want to progress it physically, really think about, as I say, the connection, not a transaction, because when it's based on connection, it's based on these healthy dynamics of 2 people giving what they can and receiving from one another, and that wonderful exchange that's not based on any attachment or control or expectation. Whereas as soon as you get into a transaction of, I give this so you owe me this, it becomes a lot more about, it's conditional giving, and it's about giving something and getting something, rather than a voluntary exchange based on 2 people coming together and creating intimacy, whether that's physical or emotional, or having a connection that is based on these 2 people or more coming together. So that's when you're thinking again about having sex, think about what's going to make you feel respected within yourself? How do you feel? What are the intentions behind those actions? What are you hoping to get out of it? Make the decisions that are right for you and really focus on the connection and not a transaction, because that's what's going to set up healthy dynamics. Even in a casual relationship, if you both know and are willing to give what you want to give and it's making you happy, that's going to be a much healthier dynamic than, well, if I do this, you have to give me that back. That's going to breed resentment over time. And if you end up being with someone for a longer period and you've started your connection based on a transaction, you know, an amount of effort gets you something, that isn't a healthy dynamic to have when you're in a long-term relationship. So think about how it's going to play out. And if you're, you know, one thing that we do see is when couples have been together for a long time, their sex life can go up and down. And again, that can be a common complaint, that I'm not getting enough sex, or I'm doing this and I'm not getting sex back, or, you know, my partner's controlling the access to sex, rather than, and then it builds resentment because that person is going, well, I'm doing all these things and before that got me sex, so why isn't it now? Rather than being empathetic and thinking, well, why isn't that person sleeping with me? What can I do to help them feel sexy and loved and adored and open and vulnerable and want to have that experience, rather than I'm going to do these things and expect something, because that always makes the other person want to do it less, because they can feel energetically that you have those expectations and they don't want to give it freely. So that's not a healthy dynamic. And finally, just want to add on to all of that, that if you are doing something because it feels good to you, because you love and respect yourself, and because you enjoy it, and because it honors a connection that you have, or it's about feeling that level of intimacy with someone, it's very hard for any judgment that someone else has on your actions to stick. And what I mean by that is that if someone says to you, oh my God, I can't believe you slept with someone on the first date, like you're for the streets, or whatever some of those insults are, if you just go, so? Like, what are they going to say to that? Honestly, when you decide to do things that feel good to you and just based on your own values and your own integrity and what feels good to you, what anyone else says or anyone else's judgments cannot hurt you. And that's why we recommend these steps, or these ways of looking at sex and physical intimacy, to decide what's right for you, because then when you respect and love yourself, the comments of anybody else can't hurt you. They just bounce off of you, and then you become free of the judgments of anybody else, and you're doing things purely because they feel good to you and not anybody else. Whereas on the flip side, if you are having sex with somebody because you feel like you need to keep them, you feel like you need to like you, or because you're not feeling confident and you're feeling insecure and you're having sex with them to validate yourself. And to be clear, we see this a lot in men and women. So sometimes what we've seen is that people have sex with lots of people to validate themselves and get that approval from several people, but at the end of it they end up feeling worse than when they started, and they don't feel good or find that validation, because we have to validate ourselves first. We have to build that self-worth and feeling good enough internally, and receiving something externally and validation from somebody typically won't do that. It'll make us feel worse because we're seeking it externally. We receive that experience that we think we want, and when it doesn't give us the feelings internally that we want, we feel the lack of it even more. So it's very hard to be judged by someone when you're doing things from your own values and from feeling good. But people on the flip side can also pick up instantly if you're doing it because you want their validation, you don't feel good about yourself because you think you have to do it to keep them. And all of those things come from insecurity and lack of confidence and lack of self-worth. And when you do that, it's a repelling energy to the other person, and it makes you feel worse internally. So that's why it's so important to do what is right for you, because whatever that looks like, it's hard for someone to criticize it or for that to stick and affect how you feel about yourself if you know that you're doing it from a place of what feels good to you. Whereas it's very, very evident energetically if you're doing something that you don't want because you think that's what you have to do. And it was interesting because there are also certain norms that we just get so used to in society. We hear these stories, or we're surrounded by these cultural norms, and then they become an expectation without necessarily questioning if they're right for us. So there are some, for example, there are in the world of gay men, casual sex is a lot more common with apps like Grindr than perhaps in the straight world, but there are still people within that area who that doesn't feel right for them. They still only want to progress things when they have an emotional connection, and it feels soulless to go from person to person, whereas some people really enjoy that. So as we say, do what feels good to you, and if it feels good to you, the norms or the judgments of anybody else won't affect you. And feel free to challenge some of those narratives in society and question them, and decide what you want to be true for you, and live life based on that, because it's so freeing and it feels good. So hope that made sense. Would love to hear your reflections below, maybe your journey with some of this and what you've tried or what you've experienced or what's felt right to you and how you've grappled with it, because we do see a lot of people that maybe have broached this area in one way at one part of their life, and then it's shifted as they've built that self-awareness. So we'd love to hear some of what you've experienced, or if you have any questions, let us know below. Thank you for liking, sharing, commenting and subscribing, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks, bye.